A single gunshot echoed across the valley as Lily Vaughn's father slumped to the ground, blood pooling beneath him like spilled wine on the dry Montana soil. And in that moment, Lily knew her life in the West would never be the same again. The year was 1876, and lawlessness ruled these territories with an iron fist, unforgiving to those who couldn't defend what was theirs. Lily dropped to her knees beside her father's body, her trembling fingers searching desperately for a pulse that was no longer there, while the distant thunder of hooves signaled the bandits' retreat. Her father had built their modest ranch from nothing, a testament to his unwavering determination and belief that the frontier offered opportunities for those brave enough to claim them. Now, at 20 years old, Lily found herself alone, the sole inheritor of both his dreams and his burdens. The land stretched out around her, beautiful and unforgiving, as the setting sun cast long shadows across the prairie. "Pa," she whispered, cradling his weathered face in her hands. "What am I supposed to do now?" The question hung in the air unanswered, carried away by the evening breeze that rustled through the tall grass. With strength she didn't know she possessed, Lily managed to bring her father's body back to their cabin, each step a painful reminder of the permanence of her loss. That night she sat on the porch, rifle across her lap, keeping vigil until dawn broke over the eastern horizon. The following day, Lily buried her father beneath his favorite oak tree, the one spot on their property where wildflowers grew in abundance during the spring. Neighbors from miles around came to pay their respects sparse, as the population was in this remote corner of Montana territory, offering condolences and promises of help that Lily knew would be difficult to fulfill given their own daily struggles. "You can't run this ranch alone, Miss Vaughn," said Mrs. Hollister, an elderly woman who lived 2 miles east with her son and his family. "It ain't proper, and it ain't safe." Lily straightened her back and lifted her chin. "I have no choice, Mrs. Hollister. This land was my father's life, and now it's mine." "At least consider taking on help," the woman persisted. "There are good men looking for honest work." Lily nodded, not because she agreed, but because she knew it was the fastest way to end the conversation. The truth was, the ranch was barely staying afloat before her father's death. Now, with just herself to tend to the cattle, repair fences, and handle all other aspects of ranch life, she wasn't sure how long she could hold on. 3 weeks after the funeral, as summer heat bore down mercilessly on the land, Lily spotted a lone rider approaching the ranch. She reached for her rifle, a habit formed since the day of her father's murder, and stepped onto the porch, shielding her eyes against the glare of the sun. The man rode tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low over his face. As he drew closer, she could make out the dust-covered clothes and the easy way he handled his horse, suggesting years of experience on the range. He stopped a respectful distance from the house and raised his hand in greeting. "Afternoon, madam," he called, his voice carrying clearly across the yard. "Name's Isaac Blackwell. I'm looking for work if you've got any." Lily kept her rifle visible but not aimed directly at him. "What kind of work are you after, Mr. Blackwell?" "Ranch hand, madam. I've worked cattle from Texas to Montana." He gestured to the fields beyond. "I noticed your north fence is down in a couple spots. Could fix that for you, for starters." Lily hesitated. She did need help, desperately so, but trusting a stranger was a risk she wasn't sure she could afford to take. Her father had always been a good judge of character, but she lacked his confidence in reading people. "I can't pay much," she said finally, deciding that pragmatism needed to outweigh caution. "And I'd need references." Isaac Blackwell reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Got a letter here from my last employer, ranch owner up in Wyoming. Says I'm honest and hardworking." He handed it down to her. Lily took the letter and scanned it quickly. The handwriting looked genuine, and the ranch mentioned was one she'd heard of before. Still, papers could be forged, and men with honest faces could harbor dishonest intentions. I'd be willing to work a week for nothing but meals, Isaac offered, as if sensing her reluctance. Let my actions speak for themselves. It was a fair proposition, and one that would give her time to assess whether he was trustworthy. Lily nodded slowly. 1 week, Mr. Blackwell. You can sleep in the barn, and meals are at sunrise and sunset. Isaac dismounted gracefully, removed his hat, and revealed a face younger than she had expected, perhaps mid-20s, with intelligent blue eyes and a jawline shadowed by several days' growth of beard. Thank you, Miss Vaughn, Lily Vaughn. Miss Vaughn? He acknowledged with a slight bow of his head. I'm grateful for the opportunity. As promised, Isaac started work immediately, beginning with the broken sections of fence. Lily watched him from a distance as she tended to her own chores, impressed despite herself by his efficiency and skill. By the time the sun began to set, he had repaired more of the fence than she could have managed in 3 days. Dinner that evening was a simple affair of beans, cornbread, and coffee. Isaac ate appreciatively, but not ravenously, maintaining a respectful silence until Lily initiated conversation. Where are you from originally, Mr. Blackwell? Born in Virginia, Miss Vaughn. Left home at 16 to find my fortune out west. A small smile touched his lips. Still looking, I suppose. And what brings you to this part of Montana? Isaac's expression sobered. Heard there was trouble with rustlers and thought honest ranchers might need an extra gun. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. I was sorry to hear about your father, Miss Vaughn. He had a good reputation in these parts. Lily's throat tightened. You knew of him? By reputation only. People spoke well of Thomas Vaughn in the towns I passed through. The mention of her father's name brought a fresh wave of grief, but also a curious comfort that his good name had spread beyond their immediate community. Lily found herself wanting to hear more, to collect these small pieces of her father's legacy like precious stones. What did they say about him? That he was fair in his dealings, helped neighbors when they needed it, stood up to those who tried to take advantage. Isaac hesitated before adding, they also said he raised a daughter who's just as strong-willed and determined as he was. Lily felt a flush creep into her cheeks, unsure whether to take his words as compliment or criticism. Being strong-willed is a necessity out here, Mr. Blackwell, not a luxury. I couldn't agree more, he replied with a nod, and please, call me Isaac. The week passed more quickly than Lily had anticipated. True to his word, Isaac proved to be an invaluable help around the ranch. He repaired fences, mended the leaking roof of the barn, and helped her round up cattle that had wandered too far from the main herd. By the end of the agreed-upon trial period, Lily knew she would be foolish to let him go. I'd like you to stay on, if you're willing, she said as they sat on the porch after dinner on the 7th day. I can pay $15 a month, plus room and board. It wasn't much, barely competitive with what other ranches might offer, but Isaac accepted without hesitation. Thank you, Miss Vaughn. I'm happy to stay. As weeks turned into months, a tentative friendship formed between them. Isaac proved to be not just a skilled ranch hand, but also a thoughtful companion. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, they sometimes sat on the porch and talked about their lives before their paths had crossed. Lily learned that Isaac had indeed grown up in Virginia, the son of a schoolteacher father and a mother who had died when he was young. He'd fought briefly for the Confederacy at the end of the war, too young to have seen much combat, and afterward had headed west like so many others, seeking a fresh start away from the devastation of the South. In turn, she shared stories of growing up on the ranch, of her mother who had died of fever when Lily was 12, and of her father's determination to create something lasting in this wild country. Isaac listened attentively, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than mere politeness. As autumn approached, bringing cooler days and the prospect of a harsh Montana winter, Lily found herself increasingly grateful for Isaac's presence, not just for the practical help he provided, but for alleviating the profound loneliness that had threatened to engulf her after her father's death. One evening in late September, as they were returning from town with supplies, Isaac suddenly reined his horse to a stop. Lily pulled up beside him, following his gaze to a plume of smoke rising in the distance in the direction of their ranch. "Riders," Isaac said tersely, pointing to dust clouds moving away from the property. "At least 3, maybe more." They spurred their horses forward, racing across the open prairie. As they crested the final hill, Lily's heart sank at the sight of flames engulfing the barn. Isaac leaped from his horse before it had fully stopped, running toward the well to start a bucket line. "The cattle!" Lily cried, dismounting and rushing to help. "Did they take the cattle?" Isaac paused just long enough to scan the pastures. "Looks like they scattered them, but most are still here. We need to save what we can of the barn first." For hours they fought the fire, eventually containing it to just the barn, which was largely destroyed. The house remained untouched, but tools, feed, and the winter's store of hay were gone. As night fell, exhausted and smoke-stained, they collapsed onto the porch steps. "Same men who killed your father, I'd wager," Isaac said, his voice hard with anger. "This is deliberate harassment." Lily nodded, too tired for tears. "They want the land. There's been talk of a railroad coming through these parts. Land values will soar if it does." "You think someone's trying to force you out before that happens?" "It would explain a lot." She looked up at him, moonlight illuminating the determination in her face. "But I'm not leaving. This was my father's dream. And I'll die before I let them take it." Isaac's expression softened. "You won't have to face this alone, Lily." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the intimacy of it hung in the air between them. "I give you my word on that." The following day, they began the process of rebuilding. Isaac rode to neighboring ranches to borrow tools and solicit help. To Lily's surprise and gratitude, several ranchers and their hands arrived the next morning, bringing lumber, supplies, and willing hands. "Your father helped most of us at one time or another," explained Mr. Tanner, whose ranch bordered theirs to the south. "Besides, these attacks concern all of us. If they can run you off your land, who's to say they won't try the same with the rest of us?" With the community's help, a new barn began to take shape. Lily worked alongside the men, hammering, sawing, and lifting as much as her strength allowed. Throughout it all, Isaac remained a constant presence at her side, anticipating needs before she expressed them and shouldering the heaviest burdens without complaint. One evening, as the rebuilt barn neared completion and the other ranchers had returned to their own properties, Lily found Isaac still working by lantern light, carefully crafting a new door for the structure. "You should rest," she said, bringing him a cup of coffee. "You've been working since before dawn." Isaac accepted the cup with a grateful smile. "I wanted to get this finished. Winter will be here before we know it." Lily sat beside him on a stack of lumber, watching his skilled hands work the wood. "I don't know how to thank you properly, Isaac. For all of this. For staying." He looked up, his eyes reflecting the lantern's glow. "You don't need to thank me, Lily. I'm exactly where I want to be." Something in his voice made her heart quicken. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly see him as more than just a hired hand, as a man whose presence had become essential to her in ways that extended far beyond his labor. Before either could speak further, the sound of approaching horses broke the moment. Isaac was on his feet instantly, extinguishing the lantern and drawing his revolver in one fluid motion. "Inside the house," he whispered urgently, "and get your rifle." Lily complied without argument, retrieving her weapon from its place near the door. Through the window she could make out 3 riders approaching slowly, their forms dark against the night sky. "That's close enough," Isaac called out from his position on the porch. "State your business or turn around." The lead rider raised his hands to show he was unarmed. "We're looking for Lily Vaughn. We have information about her father's murder." Lily moved to the door, but Isaac blocked her path. "Could be a trap," he warned. "Or it could be the truth," she countered, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "I need to know, Isaac." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Stay behind me." They stepped onto the porch together, Lily's rifle and Isaac's revolver both at the ready. The lead rider dismounted slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Miss Vaughn," he said, removing his hat. "My name is Marshal James Everett. These are my deputies." He gestured to the men still mounted behind him. "We've been investigating a series of land grabs across the territory. Your father's murder appears to be connected." "How do we know you're really a marshal?" Isaac demanded. The man produced a badge that glinted in the moonlight. "We've arrested a man in Helena who's confessed to being hired to intimidate ranchers in this region. He gave up the name of the man who paid him, a land speculator named Victor Holloway." Lily felt her breath catch. She knew the name. Holloway had approached her father multiple times with offers to buy their ranch, each offer more insistent than the last. "He's behind the fire too, then?" she asked. "Most likely. According to our prisoner, Holloway's getting desperate. The railroad announcement is expected within weeks, and he wants to control as much of the potential route as possible." The marshal's expression grew serious. "Which means you're still in danger, Miss Vaughn. Holloway won't stop until he gets what he wants." Isaac stepped closer to Lily, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the marshal. "What do you propose we do?" "I'd like to set a trap," Marshal Everett explained. "Make it known that Miss Vaughn is considering selling due to the recent troubles. Draw Holloway or his men out and catch them in the act." It was a risky plan, using Lily and her ranch as bait, but if it meant bringing her father's killers to justice and ending the threat once and for all, she was willing to take that risk. "I'll do it," she said firmly, "whatever it takes." The marshal nodded approvingly. "We'll need a few days to set things up. In the meantime, be vigilant. Holloway might make another move before we're ready." After the lawmen departed with a promise to return in 3 days' time, Lily and Isaac sat at the kitchen table, discussing the plan and its implications. "I don't like putting you in danger," Isaac said, his concern evident in the furrow of his brow. "If anything happened to you—" Lily reached across the table and placed her hand over his, a gesture of intimacy she would have thought impossible just months ago. "Nothing will happen. Not with you here." His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and calloused from hard work. "I want you to know something, Lily, in case things don't go as planned." He took a deep breath. "I didn't come to your ranch by chance. I'd heard about your father's murder and the troubles you were facing. I came specifically to offer help." Lily stared at him, processing this revelation. "Why? You didn't know us." "My own father was killed by land grabbers back in Virginia after the war. Our small farm was all we had left, and men like Holloway took it because they could." His jaw tightened at the memory. "I couldn't save my father or our land, but when I heard about what happened to Thomas Vaughn, I thought maybe I could help his daughter hold on to what was rightfully hers." The honesty of his confession touched Lily deeply. Far from feeling deceived by this omission in his past, she felt a new bond forming between them, forged by shared loss and shared purpose. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "And thank you for coming here, whatever your reasons." Their eyes held for a long moment, and Lily felt something shift between them, a tacit acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing steadily since that first day he rode onto her land. But with danger looming so close, neither dared to speak further of what might be developing between them. The next 3 days passed in a state of heightened vigilance. Isaac insisted on taking the night watch, catching sleep in short bursts during the day, while Lily kept guard. They spread word in town that Lily was considering selling the ranch, a rumor they knew would quickly reach Holloway's ears. On the evening before the marshal was due to return, a storm rolled in from the mountains, bringing driving rain and jagged lightning that illuminated the landscape in brief, electric flashes. Lily and Isaac sat in the kitchen, cleaning their weapons by lamplight, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. "I have a bad feeling about tonight," Lily admitted, glancing toward the window where rain lashed against the glass. This storm would provide good cover for anyone wanting to approach undetected. Isaac nodded grimly. "I was thinking the same. We should take turns sleeping. Both stay alert." But sleep proved elusive for both of them as the storm intensified. Around midnight, during a brief lull in the rain, Isaac stiffened suddenly, his head turning toward the window. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Lily strained her ears and caught it, a soft splashing sound, like footsteps in mud, coming from the side of the house. Isaac extinguished the lamp immediately, plunging the room into darkness. They moved silently to opposite windows, weapons ready. Through the rain-streaked glass, Lily could make out shadowy figures moving toward the house, at least 4 men, approaching with the practiced stealth of those accustomed to violence. She caught Isaac's eye across the room and held up 4 fingers. He nodded, pointing to himself, and then to the back door, indicating he would circle around behind them. Before she could object to his placing himself in such danger, Isaac had slipped out the door, disappearing into the storm-drenched night. Lily positioned herself near the front window, rifle aimed and ready, heart hammering against her ribs. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours as she waited, straining to hear anything beyond the persistent drumming of rain on the roof. When the first shot came, it startled her despite her readiness. It was followed quickly by a second and then a third. The sounds partly muffled by the storm. A man's pained cry cut through the night, and Lily's blood turned cold with fear not for herself, but for Isaac. Acting on instinct, she moved to the door and opened it just enough to see outside. Lightning flashed, illuminating the yard for a brief moment, and in that instant she saw Isaac grappling with a larger man near the barn. 2 other figures lay motionless on the ground nearby. Without hesitation, Lily stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. "Stop right there," she shouted over the rain. "The next one who moves gets a bullet." The man fighting Isaac looked up in surprise, providing just enough distraction for Isaac to land a solid punch that sent him sprawling in the mud. A 4th man, previously unseen, emerged from the shadows beside the house, his gun aimed directly at Lily. Time seemed to slow as Lily registered the threat and began to turn her rifle toward him. She heard Isaac's warning shout, saw the flash of the man's revolver, and felt a searing pain as the bullet grazed her upper arm. Her own rifle discharged instinctively, and the attacker crumpled to the ground. Isaac was at her side in an instant, one arm supporting her, while his eyes scanned for further threats. "Are you hit badly?" he asked urgently, his face pale with concern. "Just a graze," Lily assured him, though the pain was intense and blood was soaking through her sleeve. "What about the others?" "2 down, 1 unconscious," Isaac reported grimly. "Let's get you inside before—" His words were cut short by the sound of approaching horses, many of them, moving at speed despite the treacherous conditions. Both tensed, preparing for a new wave of attackers, but it was Marshal Everett's voice that called out from the darkness. "Miss Vaughn, Blackwell, are you all right?" Relief washed over Lily, her knees suddenly weak. Isaac's arm tightened around her waist, supporting her weight as the marshal and his deputies rode into the yard, lanterns held high. "We're here," Isaac called back. 4 attackers down. Lily's wounded, but not seriously. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. The marshal's men secured the surviving attackers while Everett himself confirmed what they had suspected: these were Holloway's hired guns, sent to eliminate the final obstacle to his land acquisition plans. "Holloway himself is already in custody," the marshal explained as Isaac carefully cleaned and bandaged Lily's wound at the kitchen table. We arrested him in town this afternoon based on the testimony we gathered. These men were acting on his last orders, probably given before he realized we were onto him. Lily winced as Isaac applied pressure to stop the bleeding. So it's over? Truly over? It is, Everett confirmed with a satisfied nod. Holloway will hang for your father's murder and the other crimes he's committed. His land-grabbing days are done. After the marshal and his deputies departed, taking the prisoners with them and promising to return in the morning to file formal statements, Lily and Isaac were finally alone. The storm had begun to abate, the rain softening to a gentle patter against the roof. "Let me check that bandage," Isaac said, his voice gentle as he examined his earlier work. His fingers were tender against her skin, a stark contrast to the violence they had both just experienced. Lily watched his face as he tended to her, noting the concern etched into his features, the careful way he touched her, as if she might break. "You saved my life tonight," she said quietly. Isaac's eyes met hers. "And you saved mine. That shot you made." He shook his head in admiration. "Your father would be proud." The mention of her father brought unexpected tears to Lily's eyes. "I think he would have liked you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "He always said I needed someone who could match my stubbornness." A small smile curved Isaac's lips. "Is that what I am? Someone who matches your stubbornness?" "You're more than that," Lily admitted, finding courage in the night's events to speak what had been in her heart for weeks. "Much more." Isaac's hand stilled on her arm, his expression growing serious. "Lily, I came here with a purpose to help you keep your land. Now that purpose is fulfilled." He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. "I should probably move on, find the next place I'm needed." The thought of him leaving sent a wave of panic through Lily. "Is that what you want? To leave? What I want?" He hesitated, then continued with quiet intensity. "What I want is to stay here, with you. Not as your hired hand, but as something more. If that's something you might want too." Lily reached up with her uninjured arm and placed her hand against his cheek, feeling the rough stubble beneath her palm. "It's exactly what I want, Isaac. I think maybe it has been since the day you rode up to my ranch." The relief and joy that crossed his face made her heart swell. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Isaac leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle yet filled with promise. Lily responded in kind, her fingers threading through his hair as she deepened the kiss, pouring into it all the emotions that had been building between them these past months. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Lily Vaughn. I think I've loved you since I saw you standing on that porch with your rifle, fierce and unafraid." Lily smiled, happiness blooming within her despite the pain and exhaustion. "And I love you, Isaac Blackwell. More than I thought possible after all the loss I've experienced." They sat together through the remainder of the night, talking of the future they might build on this land that had seen so much hardship and now, perhaps, would witness joy as well. By the time dawn broke, painting the eastern sky with bands of pink and gold, they had made plans for the ranch, for the coming winter, and for a life they would share together. 2 weeks later, with her arm nearly healed and the ranch beginning to recover from the turmoil of recent months, Lily stood beside Isaac as the local preacher pronounced them husband and wife. It was a simple ceremony, attended by neighboring ranchers and townspeople who had come to respect the young woman who had fought so hard to preserve her father's legacy and the man who had stood by her side through it all. As winter settled over the Montana Territory, bringing deep snows and long, cold nights, Lily and Isaac found warmth in their shared life and shared purpose. The ranch flourished under their combined care, and though memories of loss remained, They were gradually overshadowed by new memories of happiness and love. One particularly harsh night in January, as winds howled around the corners of their sturdy cabin, Isaac stoked the fire while Lily prepared a pot of coffee. The domesticity of the scene struck her suddenly how natural it felt to share this space, this life, with him. "What are you smiling about?" Isaac asked, noticing her expression as he returned to the table. "Just thinking about how much has changed in a year," she replied. "Last winter, I was alone and afraid. Now—" She reached for his hand across the table. "Now I have everything I need right here." Isaac squeezed her fingers gently. "Your father built a strong foundation for us, Lily. I hope he knows that what he started is in good hands." "I think he does," Lily said softly, glancing at her father's portrait on the wall. "And I think he's at peace with it." As spring thawed the frozen landscape, bringing new life and new possibilities to the ranch, Lily discovered she was carrying their first child. The news filled both with a joy that seemed to radiate outward, touching everything around them with renewed purpose and meaning. "A son or daughter to continue what your father began," Isaac said, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach as they stood together in the fields where cattle grazed contentedly. Lily covered his hand with her own. "A child who will know love and security, even in this wild place." The pregnancy progressed well through the summer months, but as autumn approached, bringing with it early frosts and bitter winds, Lily began to experience concerning symptoms. Fatigue beyond the normal tiredness of pregnancy plagued her, along with headaches and occasional dizziness. Isaac watched her with growing concern, insisting she rest more and take on fewer responsibilities around the ranch. He hired additional help, a young couple from town who were eager for work and quickly proved their worth. "I'm fine," Lily insisted repeatedly, though the pallor of her skin and the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. "Women have babies on the frontier every day. And I intend for you to have many more," Isaac replied firmly. "But only if you take proper care of yourself with this first one." Despite her protests, Lily found herself growing weaker as the weeks passed. By early November, she was confined mostly to bed. Her pregnancy advanced enough to show prominently, but still 2 months from full term. The local midwife visited regularly but could offer little explanation for Lily's deteriorating condition beyond the vague diagnosis of maternal exhaustion. One evening, as the first heavy snow of the season fell outside their window, Lily woke from a fitful sleep to find herself burning with fever. Isaac, who had taken to sleeping in a chair beside their bed to monitor her condition, was immediately alert. "Lily?" He pressed a hand to her forehead, his expression tightening with alarm at the heat radiating from her skin. "You're burning up." Lily tried to respond but found her thoughts scattered, her tongue thick and uncooperative in her mouth. She was aware of Isaac moving quickly around the room, stoking the fire, preparing cool cloths, his voice a constant reassurance in her increasingly hazy consciousness. "I'm going for the doctor," he told her, wrapping her in additional blankets despite the fever. "Sarah will stay with you." Sarah, the wife of the hired hand, had become a friend and helper during Lily's illness. Lily managed to grasp his hand weakly. "The baby," she whispered, fear evident in her eyes. "We'll be fine," Isaac assured her, though his own fear was visible beneath his forced confidence. "Both of you will be fine, I promise." The journey to town for the doctor was treacherous in the snowstorm, but Isaac rode as if demons were at his heels, pushing his horse through drifts that sometimes reached the animal's chest. The doctor, an elderly man named Harrington who had served the territory for decades, agreed to come immediately despite the dangerous conditions. By the time they returned to the ranch, Lily's condition had worsened dramatically. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, her skin hot to the touch. Yet she shivered violently beneath the blankets. Sarah met them at the door, her face grave with worry. She's been asking for you, she told Isaac. Keeps saying she needs to tell you something important. Isaac rushed to Lily's side while the doctor unpacked his medical bag. Her eyes, bright with fever, focused on him with difficulty. Isaac, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Promise me. Anything, he replied, taking her hand and pressing it to his lips. Anything, my love. The baby, she managed, each word an evident struggle. If you must choose, save our child. The implication of her request struck Isaac like a physical blow. No, he said firmly. No, Lily, it won't come to that. You're both going to be fine. Dr. Harrington approached the bed, his weathered face solemn as he began his examination. After several tense minutes, he beckoned Isaac to the corner of the room. It's childbed fever, he explained in a low voice. Advanced already. I've seen it many times. And I won't lie to you, Mr. Blackwell. It's serious. Isaac felt as if the floor were shifting beneath his feet. What can be done? We'll try to bring the fever down, keep her comfortable. Beyond that? The doctor shook his head slightly. It's in God's hands. For the next 3 days, Isaac barely left Lily's side. He bathed her burning skin with cool water, spooned broth between her cracked lips when she was conscious enough to swallow, and held her hand through the worst of the fever's ravings. The doctor came and went, bringing medicines that seemed to provide temporary relief at best. On the third night, as a blizzard raged outside and the temperature in the cabin dropped despite the constantly stoked fire, Lily's fever reached its peak. She thrashed in the bed, alternating between calling out for her long-dead parents and speaking to Isaac as if he were a stranger. The baby, still protected within her womb, kicked and moved with an energy that contrasted starkly with its mother's failing strength. Please, Isaac whispered, not to Lily, but to whatever higher power might be listening. Please don't take them from me. Not after everything we've fought for. Hour after hour he sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering prayers between her labored breaths. He recited every prayer he could remember from childhood, and when those were exhausted, he created his own desperate pleas for mercy and intervention. Our Father, who art in heaven, he murmured, his voice hoarse from constant use. Hallowed be thy name. Lily's breathing hitched, then steadied slightly. Isaac continued, clinging to this tiny sign of improvement. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Her fingers twitched within his grasp. He squeezed them gently, encouraging any response. On earth, as it is in heaven? Through the long night, Isaac continued his vigil, alternating between prayer and gentle reassurances. He told Lily stories of the future they would have together, of their child's first steps, of spring plantings and summer harvests, of growing old surrounded by family on the land her father had loved. You have to stay with me, Lily, he pleaded when her breathing became particularly labored. Our story is just beginning. Remember how you told me once that stubborn people don't give up? Show me that stubbornness now, my love. As dawn approached, bringing with it a cessation of the storm and a crystalline clarity to the air, Isaac noticed a change. Lily's breathing, while still shallow, had become more regular. The flush of fever in her cheeks seemed less pronounced. Hardly daring to hope, he placed a hand on her forehead and found it cooler to the touch. Dr. Harrington, who had remained through the night despite his own exhaustion, confirmed what Isaac had sensed. The fever's breaking, he said, relief evident in his voice. She's young and strong. If she can hold on a bit longer, she might pull through. Throughout that day, Lily drifted in and out of consciousness, but each time she woke, she seemed more lucid than before. By evening, she was able to take small sips of water and broth directly from a cup rather than being fed with a spoon. Isaac? She called weakly as twilight settled over the snow-covered landscape outside their window. He was at her side instantly, his face haggard from lack of sleep, but his eyes bright with hope. I'm here, Lily. I'm right here. The baby? Isaac placed his hand gently on her swollen belly, feeling a strong kick in response. Still fighting, just like its mother. A ghost of a smile touched Lily's pale lips. I heard you, she whispered. Through the fever. Your voice kept calling me back when I wanted to let go. Isaac's throat tightened with emotion. I couldn't let you go. Not you or our child. The prayers, Lily continued, her voice strengthening slightly. My father used to say the same ones when my mother was ill. I remember the sound of his voice, just like yours, steady and full of faith. Isaac pressed a kiss to her forehead, overcome with gratitude for this simple conversation after days of fevered ramblings. Rest now, he urged gently. You need to regain your strength. Lily's recovery, while not as swift as Isaac might have hoped, was steady. The fever did not return, and with each passing day, her strength gradually increased. Dr. Harrington visited regularly, expressing cautious optimism about both Lily's health and the continued well-being of their unborn child. Bed rest until the birth, he instructed firmly. No exceptions, Mrs. Blackwell. You've used up your reserves fighting this fever. Lily, humbled by her brush with mortality, did not argue. For the remaining weeks of her pregnancy, she followed the doctor's orders diligently, allowing Isaac and Sarah to tend to her needs, while she focused on regaining her strength and preparing for the birth. On a clear, cold morning in January, nearly a year after she and Isaac had first acknowledged their feelings for one another, Lily went into labor. The process was long and difficult, taxing her still recovering body to its limits. Isaac remained with her throughout, holding her hand, supporting her back during contractions, and whispering encouragements that echoed those he had offered during her illness. After 15 hours of labor, their daughter was born, a robust infant with a shock of dark hair and a powerful cry that seemed to announce her determination to thrive despite the challenges that had preceded her arrival. She's perfect, Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face as the midwife placed the swaddled infant in her arms. Absolutely perfect. Isaac sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Lily's shoulders, his free hand gently stroking his daughter's cheek. What shall we name her? Lily looked up at him, her exhaustion evident but overshadowed by profound joy. Hope, she said simply, because that's what kept us both alive. Hope, Isaac repeated, testing the name and finding it fitting. Hope Blackwell, granddaughter of Thomas Vaughn and heir to all he built. The following spring, as wildflowers began to bloom on the prairie and new calves strengthened the herd, Isaac and Lily stood together beneath the oak tree where her father was buried. Hope, now 3 months old and thriving, slept peacefully in her mother's arms, unaware of the significance of this place or the legacy she represented. He would have adored her, Lily said, gazing down at the simple wooden marker that bore her father's name. And he would have been so proud of what we've accomplished here. Isaac nodded, his arm around Lily's waist. This land is secure now. For Hope, and for any brothers or sisters that might come along. Lily smiled, leaning into his embrace. I'd like that. A house full of children, growing up strong and free on this land. As they turned to walk back to their house, now expanded with a new room for the baby and plans for further additions as their family grew, Isaac paused to look out over the ranch. Cattle grazed contentedly in the distance, fields were prepared for planting, and the rebuilt barn stood sturdy against the horizon. When I rode onto this land a year ago, he said thoughtfully, I was still searching for something. Purpose, maybe, or a place to belong. And did you find it? Lily asked, though she knew the answer. Isaac smiled, looking from the prospering ranch to his wife and child. I found everything I never knew I was looking for, and more than I ever dared to hope for. Lily stretched up to kiss him, their daughter nestled safely between them. "As did I," she whispered against his lips. "As did I." In the years that followed, the Blackwell Ranch became known throughout the territory as one of the most successful operations in the region. Isaac and Lily worked side by side to build on the foundation that Thomas Vaughn had established, introducing new breeding stock and farming techniques that increased their productivity and prosperity. Hope was joined by 2 brothers and another sister over the next 6 years. The children grew strong in the clear mountain air, learning the ways of ranch life from parents who valued hard work and integrity above all else. Lily often told them stories of their grandfather, ensuring that Thomas Vaughn's memory and values continued to influence the new generation. The railroad did eventually come through the territory, though its route passed several miles from their property, close enough to provide convenient access to markets without disrupting their way of life. The town expanded, bringing new settlers, businesses, and opportunities that enriched the community. Through it all, Isaac and Lily remained as devoted to each other as they had been during those early days when he held her hand through the fever, whispering prayers between every breath. Their love, forged in crisis and strengthened through shared purpose, became the foundation upon which they built not just a successful ranch, but a meaningful life, one that honored the past while embracing the promise of the future. On their 20th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching their children tend to evening chores, Lily reached for Isaac's hand, just as she had countless times over the years. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly. "Coming here, staying through all the hardships?" Isaac brought her hand to his lips, the gesture as tender now as it had been when they were young. "Every moment," he replied without hesitation. "Every struggle, every triumph, every ordinary day in between. I wouldn't change a single one of them." Lily rested her head on his shoulder, content in the knowledge that what they had built together, their family, their ranch, their love, was sturdy enough to weather whatever storms might still lie ahead. The Wild West had tested them, shaped them, and ultimately rewarded their perseverance with a life richer and more meaningful than either could have imagined that day when a lone cowboy rode up to a grieving daughter's ranch, offering help and finding, in return, a home for his heart.